Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad that you're here. Welcome to our December 21st, 2023 Planning Board meeting. If you'd like or wish to speak tonight, make sure you please fill out a green form. And of course, we'll give everybody the same amount of time. You'll have 3 minutes as you come up. Please state your name and address for our records. We're glad you're here and happy early holidays. May we have a roll call, please, Ms. Washington?
Certainly. Mr. Barhu,
Present?
Mr. McLean,
Here.
Mr. Newman,
Present.
Mr. Robinson,
Present.
Mr. Servance, Mr. Weatherholtz,
Here.
Ms. Washington. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Everybody have their minutes. You had a chance to look over the minutes.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Need a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposers have the same right. Minutes are carried. Thank you very much. Item number 4, please.
Item number 4 is continued from the November 16th meeting, 2023. Planning Board, Ms. Askew.
Good evening, Rose Askew, Project Manager. Tonight I have on glasses and contacts because I only have one contact in one eye, so forgive me. So I'm having a little bit of vision issues tonight.
If we look at this funny, don't take offense.
Oh, you're looking this way?
Yeah, so, yeah. So. This is a request by Robert Merrill, Esquire, with Cobb Cole on behalf of Daytona Beach Kennel Club for approval of the 7th Amendment to the Daytona Beach Kennel Club Plan District Agreement to add outdoor event centers as a permitted use on the property, development standards and provisions to govern the use. This is the site location. The property is located at the southwest intersection of Williamson Boulevard and Bellevue Avenue. This is an aerial view of the property and is currently developed as a pari-mutuel bedding facility. The future land use on the property is mixed use, and the zoning is planned development general. A little bit of background. At the February 7th, 2007 City Commission meeting, the commission approved the Daytona Beach Kennel Club planned commercial development at that time to allow pari-mutuel bedding facility providing live on-premise greyhound racing and card room simulcast broadcasting of greyhound racing, highlight, horse racing, family amusement, and entertainment facilities, and other sporting events. On December 19th, 2007, the First Amendment was approved to the Kennel Club PD to allow for expansion of the existing facility. On April 17th, 2011, the Second Amendment was approved to allow for an electronic message center sign. On July 14th, 2014, the Third Amendment was approved to allow static, graphic, and multiple colors on the existing EMC sign. 2016, the Fourth Amendment was approved to allow for a solar energy collection system. On September 2017, the Fifth Amendment was approved to allow for the frequency of change of the signed copy on the existing EMC sign to be reduced from 60 seconds to 10 seconds. And then on December 19th, 2018, the Sixth Amendment to the PD was approved to incorporate the existing billboard on the site sign and to allow for additional wall signage on the property. So then that brings us to the Seventh Amendment Kennel Club Plan Development Agreement. So the proposed amendment is a two-part request. The first part is to allow outdoor event center as a principal use on the property, and some of the uses included but are not limited to public gatherings, concerts, festivals, charitable events, outdoor product entertainment, shows or sales, and supplementary parking for off-site special events and sidewalk sales. The second part of the amendment request includes an amendment to Section 17C of the PD to add additional provisions for amendments to the PD agreement to clarify the process for amending the PD agreement, clarification on who is considered a necessary party to the amendment and who is not, and clarification on the term directly impacted lot. One of the requests in the amendment was it included notification to notify the city at least 30 days prior to the event with specific requirements for what must be in the notification. And it included information like location of the property, activities that'll be occurring on the property, times, and conditions of how they can operate during the event. The applicant is, although he included the requirement to notify the city, the applicant is requesting that the notification be provided as a courtesy without allowing the city the authority to review the event request and make changes as needed. The applicant has provided, and he provided a site layout that identified it that you will see later on in there. We held a meeting with them about a couple of months ago, and we discussed the proposed amendment. We had no problems with, no issues at all with the proposed uses they were asking for. However, for life safety purposes, we did tell them it was imperative that they allow city review for things like police, fire, traffic, and those kinds of things to make sure that the city can adequately accommodate the events if they need it. And then for parking, the current PD requires 640 hard surface parking spaces to accommodate the live Greyhound racing and poker room. But in 2020, the Greyhound racing use was ceased, so now they only have the poker room. So the applicant is requesting to redistribute the existing parking to allow 312 of the existing 640 hard surface parking spaces to accommodate the proposed outdoor event center activities and to refurbish the parking areas. In your staff report, I think I included their memo that they provided that talked about, that it's clarified how they were already able to accommodate these new uses that they're asking for with parking based on what they already have developed because they no longer have the Greyhound racing.
Yep, you did.
So for landscaping, the applicant's proposing the following landscaping improvements. They've provided details of refurbishing the parking lot landscaping, and then they added language that said prior to the addition of the, prior to the additional uses outlined in section 3 of the amendment being permitted on the property, the developer shall landscape upgrades in accordance with the LDC. So they're going to provide landscaping meeting land development code requirements within the parking lot islands and within the existing parking area for the property. And they're also going to demonstrate that portions 3 of the site utilized for formal special events shall be sodded or reseeded and returned to their prior state, meaning once the special event is over, any damage that happens to the landscaping or the surfacing or anything, they're going to have to make sure that they restore all of that back to the original way that it was prior to the event occurring. So they provided pictures. These are some of the photos that they gave us to show you how they plan to improve the landscape islands and stuff in the parking lot. This is a drawing that shows how the activities and where they will be located on the property. So I don't know if this has a pointer. Does this have a pointer? Okay. So we're at the top where you see outdoor event area, and I just want to make sure I clarify, they already have activities out there. They currently go through our special event process every single time they want to have something out there. So this, approving this amendment will allow them not to have to do that whole application process and go through all of that waiting to be able to have it, but they will have to provide us with the layout that shows us how it's going to operate. So it'll show it, and then the police, fire, traffic, utilities, and everybody will be reviewing it for safety purposes, but they won't be reviewing it for approval of the event itself because the PD amendment is approving the use already. So I want to make sure we understand it's not for them to look at it to say whether the use is allowed. It's for us to look at it for safety to make sure that it's meeting all the safety regulations that we need them to be able to provide, and for police to know whether or not they have adequate people available and fire in case they're needed. So as a recommendation, staff recommends approval of the 7th Amendment to the Daytona Beach Kennel Club Plan Development with the condition that city staff reviews all events for the purpose of compliance with fire, police, traffic, and permitted licensing review for building code regulations relating to the temporary structures. A majority vote of planning board members present in voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission. This concludes staff's presentation.
Are there questions for staff?
Quick one, Mr. Chairman, if I might. Rose, you were mentioning about the August 15th meeting where the discussion wasn't about the uses, it was about safety concerns relative to fire regulations, what the police department and also permit and licensing regarding temporary structures. My question is, at the end of that meeting, did the applicant agree to staff's suggestion at that time?
Not at that time, but we have had discussions afterward, and I'll let the applicant tell you what they decided.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Robinson?
Good segue.
Ms. Rose, does anybody else on any other business have that arrangement that this applicant is
When you
looking
say
for,
arrangement, what do you mean?
where they can submit for review only, but not application for the event?
Well, in plan developments, once the use is approved, you don't have to then apply for a special event because it's already approved in your PD that you're allowed to have special events. But you do have to notify the city, and they have notification regulations and stuff there that they're gonna give us the information within so many days of the event for us to be able to look at. But it was just as a courtesy. Staff stressed to them the importance of them being able to provide it for us to review for those safety reasons that we currently have in the staff report. But yes, in plan development agreements, and if you're just a regular property that's developed for something else, you do have to apply. You go through a whole application process where we review all of that stuff, the same stuff we're asking to look at for them. It's just the only difference is their use will already be approved. When you apply through the special event process, we're reviewing it to see if that use can work there and everything. In addition to the safety regulations, they have to provide a whole list of conditions for how it's going to operate, contact information, and all of that. For plan development agreements, all of that information is already provided in the development agreement.
Well, should we include some more conditions in the plan development, in the PD?
They do have more conditions in there. There are conditions in the plan development agreement, but typically for planning board, the PD agreement is not part of what we all provide. It's a whole document that goes to city commission. I mean, if you have any questions about any kind of conditions, because the applicant can tell you more specific about the list of other things that they have in there that's in our land development code.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see what those conditions
Sure.
are, so I can be more educated on
Okay.
what they're asking us to do and more knowledgeable for me to, say yes or no. I need to see what conditions they're asking us to approve on from the front end. And I also see 3 outdoor events area.
That means they can have events in any of those areas that they show there. That's what that means. Those are the areas on the property that they have identified as being able to host special events in those areas. And if you notice, they've got the parking that's centrally located where it will be able to accommodate regardless of any of the places where they decide to have the event.
Rose, can you talk a little bit about the events that they currently hold out there and what their process has been up till now?
Correct. Right now, I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Circus that they host at the Kennel Club. They have it every year. It's an annual event. That's a special event. Every year, the Circus comes through. They have to apply and go through the special event process every time they do it. And they follow the regulations in our land development code for the requirements for that. So they submit it. It goes through, we have a special events review team of staff members that review it, and we look at it to see, and the things that we have to look at this point while they're going through that is whether or not the site is large enough to accommodate the use, whether or not it's appropriate for the area that it's in, making sure that they're meeting requirements in our land development code under the special use in 5.4C4 of the code for all of those. For a plan development, when it gets approved in there, a plan development writes their own criteria. And so what we do as staff members is we look at it and we look at the land development code and we identify things that it may not match in the land development code, but that's the purpose of a plan development, is to allow them to have the leniency to develop the property for the uses. Whereas if they tried to go by straight land development code regulations, it may not work for the development that they want to do and the activities they want to do on the property.
So in essence, then, they can bring the circus in next year
They do it every
They
year.
do it.
Every year they
I know,
have it.
But I understand, what I'm saying is, for example, they could bring the circus in next year without our approval or disapproval if we agreed on this plan development, because it would be an outdoor event, and they would not need a special occasion, special event application.
That's correct. They won't need that. The use is tonight. This use will already, after we finish, this use will already be allowed. They already are allowed to have outdoor recreation and entertainment uses. They are formalizing it and bringing some criteria in place to help streamline it and to make sure that they're meeting what requirements the city wants them to be able to do. And so they already do it every year. So they'll do the same thing. It's just that they don't have to fill out a formal application, but they still have to provide us with a layout that shows how the event is going to operate. In addition to that, their PD agreement has the conditions in there for the things that can occur and tell us. So when it comes into us, to staff to review, the police department, police department, permits and licensing, because permits is going to look at it for any structures that are greater than 120 square feet, I think it is, and they'll have to pull a permit to be able to erect those temporary structures. And they do that every year when we do the circus. Once we look at it and we approve it, then they go downstairs to permits and licensing. We won't be looking at it to approve the use. We will be looking at it to make sure that it's meeting all of the safety requirements for the city. For instance, a lot of times when they have the event, traffic may get backed up. So police will have a comment on that. They're providing language in the plan development agreement to address how they're going to try to accommodate making sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. So those are the conditions that are provided in the PD. And a lot of them are the same thing that's in our special use criteria. It's just that now it's going to be approved in the plan development agreement. So what will happen is, instead of them coming to us saying, okay, I'm going to pay $75 and I want y'all to do this whenever we want to do it, the plan development agreement approves the use, and now they're only be required to give us the layout, which is the same thing they would give us if they went through that process, for us to review it for the same things we review it for now.
But currently, though, we can object to an event, correct? By not granting them a special event.
Yeah, we can. If it's a special event, we can.
But-
Done through the special event process. However,
Right.
if the use is allowed there, because we've got in our land development code where special events are allowed, how they're allowed. So if they're meeting all of that criteria in the land development code for the special event, then no, we can't.
But what if they don't meet all the criteria?
Then we provide them with comments back that say, our land development code requires this, however, you're asking for this. This is not something that's currently allowed. And so we work with them until we get to the point where they're meeting the code. If for some reason we can't get to that point, they take it to city commission, and city commission has to approve it.
Okay, so in other words, there is a follow-up, a second.
Yeah,
in the-
we review it just like we review all of our projects that come in.
Yeah, that was my concern. I don't want the city, the planning department to say, no, we object. They say, well, it's in the PD, buy and go do it anyway. They might have an event that's objectionable to the community and not in the community's best interest, and they went ahead and do it anyway without any, repercussions.
But that's why we're having these public meetings. If the community is an objection to anything in here, it's their responsibility to be in this meeting to voice their opinion. That's why we're having the public meeting, for them to be able to do those types of things. But we can't, after it's been approved, just because somebody may not like an event, say, well, you can't have that one. It's already allowed in the plan development agreement, and they will be able to go through the process to turn in the layout and provide us with the things that we need in order for us to look at it for life safety purposes. I want to make sure I stress it.
Well, we don't have that agreement.
What do you mean?
You said we don't have the conditions.
It's typically not in a rezoning, it's not in here in a rezoning. It's in staff report. And the applicant will talk to you more about, if you have some more specific questions, they will talk to you to address your specific question.
You,
Okay,
but I want to get your input first. Thank
Sure.
you.
you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any other questions for staff? If not, may we hear from the applicant, please? Thanks, Brother.
You're welcome.
Rose does a great job, and there's not a whole lot more that I can say. Dennis, I would almost, Rob Merrill for the record with Cobb Cole, I would almost maybe lean to you because I think some of the times that we get into conversations like Rose just had with Milverton, it's because Milverton's not looking at a PD agreement, where there may be some things that I think most of the answers to Milverton's question are in the staff report to some extent, but maybe not in the type of detail that he's looking for. But in order for me to know, which page and what aspect of the PD agreement to address Milverton, I need to know really what you're concerned about. So let's say you don't like the circus. If there's some aspect of it that you don't like, need to understand that so we understand what it is we need to do to safeguard, any. In this case, we're talking about public safety type stuff as opposed to is it a good use? Because the uses are going to be embedded in just like any mixture of uses in a PD document, and then you got to make sure that they have criteria, and parameters for how you can do them. How many parking spaces do you need to have? How many access points do you have to have? What sort of structure are you using when people are here, et cetera. So, Dennis, I'm going to give it to you because.
Thank you. But I think Mr. Robinson was asking, what are the safeguards in place?
Yeah, for which aspect of it, I guess.
Any
question.
aspect, Mr.
Okay.
I'm going to have Jessica come up.
I got the architect for the agreement. I guess part I'm leaning towards, and I don't want to spin off into changing your procedures, but your current procedures, when we come to the planning board, you guys don't have a copy of the complete development agreement, which
That's a lot of paper.
a plan development has a plan and a written agreement, which this young lady is the architect of. So any aspect of it that you want to ask about. So if you want her to go through the whole agreement as it relates to the parameters and criteria, she can do that. Maybe just a highlight, Jessica, for Milverton would be helpful.
And, I apologize, but you're asking me to approve an amendment to something I have no knowledge of, and you're asking me to approve something to send it to the city commission.
We'll help you.
So
let
I'm saying,
Jessica kind of
what are
explain
the
it.
safeguards? You might decide to bring an army in and start to train army folks up there and call it training,
So good news is we didn't include that in the list of uses.
I don't
And I'm not seeing a war coming this way, but who knows? People were mad about the dogs going away, so I don't.
I know they were.
Go ahead.
was too.
Good evening,
Go
Jessica
ahead.
Gal, Copco Law Firm, 149 South Ridgewood Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. I will say, in your staff report, the conditions are listed just text-based instead of the copy of the amendment. This one's short, it's only 3 pages, the actual amendment, so it's all pretty much in there. The conditions that we have in the text, and Rose did a great job of explaining the typical process where you'd get comments back that said you're not complying with the special event criteria. In our case, I think what we've set it on is we'll have an electronic submittal to the city, and if they had something that we bump up against, it wouldn't be you're not complying with the special event criteria, it would be you're not complying with the criteria in the development agreement, the PD agreement. And so those are pretty broad. The first deals with parking. It's that we have 640 spaces on site. Anytime a special event is occurring, we have to make sure 330 of those are set aside for the poker room use, because that's what that needs and generates. And so the rest of that parking can be used for the special events. Hours of operation are from 8 a.m. to midnight, although some setup activities for like the circus can occur outside of that, but the events can't go beyond that. We have to provide 30 days notice to the city with a layout that demonstrates access, parking, the street access points, any emergency access points. The hours of operation are in there. Any kiosks and sales have to be 50 feet from a property boundary. That's your typical rule. Oil and gas receptacles have to be provided for each vendor. If you have a funnel cake vendor or something like that at the carnival, they have 24 hours after the event to properly dispose of the oil. This is just getting into how detailed the conditions are. These are on the agreement. And within 10 days of that event concluding, you have to return the site to its pre-existing condition. So if you've had, stakes in the ground or something like that, you've got the tents up, you have 10 days for it to look exactly like it did before the event started. Now, in terms of the scope of the events, I will say that special events in Daytona, there are certain areas that are exempt from that permitting process overall. It's any special event that occurs in a residential project or in common areas of a residential project, and special events that occur on sites designed for that use, typically used for that. I think with the dogs leaving this site, the discussion with the city has been, it's probably a good site for that. What's the old track if not a place maybe for a concert? some, fun activity. They're really utilizing this
Army
space.
training or not?
Not
Okay.
army training. Yeah, so we've got arts and crafts festivals, public holiday celebrations, of course, the carnival, and then nonprofit promotional activities. If you had a fun run 5K or something like that out there, those are included.
My concern,
She could go on forever.
yes, I don't want you to go on forever, but duration, is it in the PD agreement for how long you can have these outdoor events?
There's not a limitation on they can't last more than like 7 days. I know the carnival is usually a 5-day event, I think.
So you can have them for how long? What's your duration?
It's not limited in the PD.
So you can have it for,
But there's a, not written, but there's a tilting point on where a temporary event becomes a permanent event.
yeah.
And that's not permitted. These are temporary uses of the site.
Okay,
So anytime you're installing permanent infrastructure to support an event, that's not going to be temporary. Something that you can't set up and break down in short order, that wouldn't be temporary. So there's
and
that.
is that in the PD agreement?
That's just a
So
planning.
so I assume we could do that. I
Yeah.
mean, we could put it at Milverton, if that was a concern, we can add that to the agreement.
What kind of duration were you,
I guess we probably should collaborate with the folks that are running the events and find out, they're not with us tonight, but we can talk about that and get back with you guys and put something in there before we get to the city commission.
to ensure that's a temporary event? And
Yeah, it's good, it's a good question,
Temporary
it's a
can
good
be 2
point.
years, 5 years, or? 6
Yeah, as a
years.
matter of fact, we just had a big meeting today about another project that had the same kind of questions raised, and it's a good one, so.
What about the
thanks.
safeguards? Is it in the PD agreement? Like
Well,
if the city, the planner says, nah, and you say, well, hey, it's, we're gonna do it anyway.
So as Rose said,
My safeguards.
we're talking life safety stuff primarily. So the fire department's going to look at it, the utilities folks and the, the people who deal with access, vehicular access. So, they're going to tell us what needs to be done in order to meet their criteria with respect to those things. Again, it's not going to be a zoning thing. It's going to be a life safety thing.
And are you gonna comply with? those?
Absolutely, have to comply.
You
That's
have
the
to,
point,
right.
yeah.
Is it
So I
the
guess I
PD?
should have said at the beginning, Overton, I apologize. Rose kind of left it open that we hadn't closed that, and I thought we kind of did today in our conversation on another meeting, but we're okay with the condition that she placed on the approval, recommendation of approval.
Solves my question.
Yeah, I should have said that at the beginning. That's
Thank you.
my bad, sorry.
So safeguards and disagreements is out to resolve those issues are in the agreement.
They will be.
Will be.
It's the settling, so they weren't in the agreement because like Rose said, we're not going to submit a formal special event application
Yeah, I
and go through
understand
that process. It'll
Yeah.
be an electronic transmittal. It'll be sent out to all the reviewers. We'll get feedback. And it's pretty in-depth. We've gone through quite a few of these with Rose, and she's a genius on these. She's at the
know-
mastermind too. But they go through, your trash receptacles can't be there because the flow of traffic may interfere. The bathrooms need to be placed on this side. And so they get into
Yeah,
those
yeah.
details.
I'm talking about like if say the ISB or International Speedway have an event, and then Rockville has an event, and then your client has an event. There's some safety issues there.
Yeah, we
And-
coordinate with fire, police, make sure we have traffic guides out in place, the flow
And
of
if you,
traffic
and
is
you're
planned.
gonna agree with the coordination,
Yes.
the life safety. and
That's what I was trying to say. We will agree to Rose's condition that we have to meet the criteria of the life safety.
I'm good with
Yeah,
that.
100%.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see it.
I hope you're rested up after last night. You know, I get a little suspicious when it says it's not mandatory. With something, with the event, I've been out, it's great, they have great events.
They do.
Is any of this, because that area there, it's pretty open, there's gonna be a lot of development coming in around it, a lot of open property there. And the thing with houses and everything, they know that the events are there, but yet they build and, it's like, they buy a house and, and an airport's there, then they complain about the airplanes coming over the house.
There really are airplanes coming over.
Yeah. Is there anything that they would be concerned with the
Yeah.
going on?
No, so we've got industrial on one side, we've got the airport, the landing right behind us. We have the Speedway over here, we've got a shopping center around the corner. I think the closest homes you would get to is over across
Boca,
in Indigo.
coming in through.
Indigo on the other side of 92. So yeah, this is, when we originally did this, you remember when I started with the Kennel Club many years ago, they were over on the Speedway property. And so we did a lot of stuff. And then now actually, interestingly, I think one of your items tonight is a redevelopment of that site that we redeveloped back then. So there's a lot of history in this one. But at the end of the day, these guys have been out here, doing what they've done for a long time. And now that the dogs aren't there, we're trying to repurpose it. So I think the city staff has been real, helpful and cooperative and trying to help us do this. In fact, I think, Rose's job gets easier, just like ours, by putting these rules in place and then just having this be a little easier, more streamlined process. That's pretty much what this comes down
Yeah,
to.
and from a staff point of view, this is something we've actually asked them to do in the past. We get these applications coming in on a regular basis, and what we were saying was this site actually works well for events like this. You need to put it into your PD agreement to allow these events to occur without coming in on a regular basis and asking for it. So as long as there's a process in place that we can review it to make sure that we have the life safety, then we would be okay with it, and that's what we're going to be doing.
Because that was one of my questions is whether, when they submit the applications, whether it's a long time, a tedious process, and maybe not quick enough. Sometimes happens. But
Yeah, like Dennis said, this is as much their idea as ours. I think it makes everybody happy. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Guys
Quick
good?
comment, if I could, Mr. Chairman. I think it's, the PD I have no problem with, because I think it just memorializes what uses have been traditionally there to begin with. And since you have no issue with the city having the last bite of the apple, if you will, from a life and public safety standpoint, as long as we go about it that way, I think it's completely appropriate. So I'll be ready to make a motion when you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Just before we get there.
Yes, sir.
I don't have any green forms. Is there anyone would like to speak for or against this item? All right, go for it.
Okay, there we go. Move approval with the conditions that city staff reviews all events for the purpose of compliance of fire regulations, police department review for traffic, and permit and licensing review for building code requirements related to temporary structures of agenda item number 4, rezoning amendment, plan development general, 7th Amendment, DV 2023-066, Daytona Beach Kennel Club PD. That was long.
Second.
Yeah, it's been motion properly. Second, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposed, have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much. Item number 5, we have a request. One is just continuance. We have that. Okay.
Request to be continued.
Okay, staff received a request from Calvin Cole on behalf of Jones Hill Golf LLC property owners to continue this item. That's item number 5 for continuance. May I have a motion, please?
The question, if I could jump in for discussion, if I could. Do we have a date certain for this
Yeah,
continuance?
the question.
Thank you, great question. No. So that's what why I'm suggesting we just go ahead and we continue this item. We'll bring it back when it's ready to go. They're going to have to re-notice this with the, do their newspaper notice again, or their mail notice on this again. But we'll bring it back and it'll be on the agenda at an upcoming agenda. We're just not sure if it's going to be the next one or the meeting after that.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Motion to continue. May I have a second?
Second.
There's been properly motion to second. May I, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposed, have the same right. Item number 6.
Move to continue, Mr. Chairman?
Yep, same thing.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right. Okay. Item 6 is continued also. Ms. Washington, item number 7, please.
Item number 7, Entrada PD, I almost said PDQ, PDG rezoning, DEV 2023-028, quasi judicial hearing.
Then we hear from staff.
Good evening. Hannah Ward, Planning. All right. Oop. I don't know what's going on with the power. Okay, perfect. So this is a request by Jessica Gao with Cobb Cole, and it's on behalf of Thoroughbred Classics LLC, who's the property owner, and Elevation Development LLC, the developer, to rezone 120.9 plus or minus acres of property from single-family residential 5 zoning to plan development general zoning to allow for a mixed-use development, including residential, commercial, and institutional uses. All right, the site is located at the northeast corner of LPGA Boulevard and the West International Speedway Boulevard intersection. As you can see from the aerial view of the property, it's currently vacant and undeveloped. The future land use on the property is split between level 1 residential, level 2 residential and retail, and the zoning on the property is single-family residential 5. And they're proposing to go to a planned development general zoning designation. All right. I've shown the proposed PD plan up here on the screen. There's basically 2 main components to this development. There's going to be a mixed-use area, which is proposed at the corner of LPGA and International Speedway Boulevard. And then the remainder of the property shown in yellow is intended for residential uses. And if you look at the PD plan, there are a number of areas that have been identified for green space, open space, and wetland preservation. But they've identified kind of a separation between where the mixed use could go, which could also contain residential, and then the area that's intended for more low intensity residential uses. I've also identified 3 access points that they're showing currently on this plan that would connect to the external street network, but those obviously have not been fully determined at this time. All right, just to get into some of the project details, they're requesting a maximum of 600 residential units for the entire property. The density calculation was also provided in the staff report, reflecting that it was less than what any of the land uses would actually permit within this area. The proposed intensity or maximum floor area ratio is 3. That would be consistent with the retail future land use designation applicable to a portion of the site. For any of the buildings that are constructed along LPGA and ISB and are visible from those roadways, they would be required to comply with the city's exterior color and design standards for major city thoroughfares at the time of site development. There are a number of uses that they've requested in the PD that are outlined in the staff report, one of which includes self-storage, which currently has a 500-foot separation requirement from a major city thoroughfare, and they've requested to reduce that down to 300 feet for this development. All right. With regard to the community form standards that they're required to comply with as a property that's west of 95, they are proposing to comply with a minimum internal street connectivity index score of 1.7, which is required for PD districts. There is a connectivity plan included in your staff report that shows the potential internal connections, but obviously they would have to show at the time of site development that they're meeting that minimum. With regard to subdivision access, they're also proposing to be LDC compliant. The Land Development Code identifies number of access points that are required based on the number of residential units proposed, as well as the acreage associated with any sort of non-residential uses. With regard to open space, they're proposing to comply with the 20% requirement identified in the Land Development Code. Parking, for the most part, will be compliant with the LDC. They've requested some minor modifications related to cottage-style multifamily development, which they're requesting to reduce from 2 spaces per dwelling unit to 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit would be the standard that they're required to comply with. And then they are requesting to allow tandem parking for multifamily residential uses. This is something now that's been requested as part of a lot of the planned developments that have come forward lately, but basically would allow for two vehicles to be stacked within a driveway, provided that they're for the exclusive use of 1 residential unit. All right, with regard to the lot development criteria, they proposed a unique program that differs from the Land Development Code. So for single family lots, they are requesting a minimum lot size of 4,000 square feet, a minimum lot width of 40 feet, maximum lot coverage of 67%, and then front and rear setbacks of 20 feet, which would still allow for the required parking to be developed on site. And then they've also requested reductions for accessory structure setbacks to a minimum of 1.5 feet, but the standards in your staff report reflect that some of these will be closer to compliance based on the type of specialty setback, and then obviously some of the more like equipment related things such as like air conditioning units, those would have a lesser setback of 1.5 feet. With regard to townhomes, they're requesting a lot size of 1,200 square feet and a maximum lot coverage of 50%. The front and rear setbacks are requested, or the rear and side setbacks are requested to be reduced to 10 feet. And then they've requested to reduce the driveway setback for individual lots from 5 feet to 2.5 feet. And that is as a result of plans that we've had submitted recently for townhome projects where it's been identified that that isn't really a setback that works on townhome lots because of the narrow lot sizes. With regard to landscaping, the Scenic Thoroughfare Overlay District applies to both LPGA and Williamson Boulevard and requires a 50-foot landscape yard. They are proposing that they will comply with those requirements at the time of site development, and all other perimeters of the property would have a required perimeter landscape buffer of 15 feet. With regard to building perimeter landscaping, they're requesting to waive the requirements for cottage-style multifamily uses. Because these are being developed more like single-family for rent products, they're proposing to comply with the single-family landscape standards in the Land Development Code. With regard to property perimeter landscaping, they've requested to waive those requirements within the mixed-use area so as to kind of like allow a continuous development through the individual lots. So each lot won't look like a separate individual development. It'll all be kind of like a connected commercial development with individual lots. And they've also requested to reduce the required property perimeter landscaping in this area for the same reasons. With regard to perimeter buffers, they're also waived within the area, the mixed-use area of the project, and where wetlands to be conserved would abut the property boundary, which would still allow for landscaping at the property perimeters. It would just be natural preservation versus a planted buffer. And then with regard to all other tree preservation requirements, they are proposing to be LDC compliant. All right. Now, with regard to multifamily, they're proposing two different types of products here. One would be a garden-style multifamily, which is more of like the buildings with multiple floors and units within those structures. And then also the cottage-style multifamily, which is developed more like a single-family product. For the multifamily, they've requested uniform setbacks of 10 feet, where the code would require setbacks based on the maximum height. And then they've also requested to reduce the building spacing to 20 feet, a uniform setback of 20 feet for front to front and front to rear spacing, and then 15 feet for front to side and side to side spacing. And then with regard to the cottage-style multifamily, they've requested a 5-foot setback or separation between individual units. And then obviously the increase as well to the 50% building coverage. With regard to the sidewalks, they are required to construct sidewalks on both sides of the streets. They've requested to reduce the width within the commercial area to 5 feet so that there's consistent width throughout the residential area as well as the commercial area. And then they've also requested to reduce the required sidewalks to one side of the street abutting wetland areas or preservation areas. And then that sidewalk would actually be expanded to a larger width in order to kind of make up the difference. All right. They also have proposed a sign plan for the development that contemplates signage for the overall project. So I included the table that was provided as part of the PD agreement. They're requesting one entrance feature that would have a maximum height of 13.5 feet and a maximum sign area of 432 square feet. As you can see, it's designated as sign A on the plan, so that would really be for the entrance to the development. And this is a rendering of the sign, which is also included in the packet. They've requested some secondary entrance signs. Those are identified as signs B. Those would have a max height of 9 feet and a maximum area of 56 square feet. And those are also shown here as elevation type B, just kind of like showing you how they could potentially be developed. We have some wayfinding signs, which are primarily viewed as directional signs. Those would also be a max height of 9 feet and 56 square feet. Out parcel signs, they're requesting a max quantity of 10 of those, which would have a height of 9 feet and 56 square feet, and then one potential artistic sign that would be located within the stormwater retention area at the entrance to the project. And that would also have a maximum sign area of 432 square feet. The elevations for the signs are shown above. You can see the type B, type C, and type D signs that all correspond to the signs shown on the sign plan. And that's also included within your packet. And then to get into some of the modifications, monument signs are permitted in max height of 8 feet in the Land Development Code. They're requesting a max height of 13.5 feet. For just the entrance sign and the artistic sign, they're requesting an increase from 120 square feet to 432 square feet per sign. Keep in mind, these are entrance signs for the development. And then the remainder of the signs are well below the code maximums of 120 square feet. As you can see, they're all proposed at about 56 square feet per sign. With regard to wall sign area, the code only contemplates the development of wall signs based on lot frontage. But what we often see with shopping centers is tenant spaces that are all connected to each other. So the applicant has proposed wall sign area to be calculated based on tenant frontage, which would be 2 square feet per 1 linear feet up to a maximum of 200 square feet, which does comply with the Land Development Code maximums. And then because this site is going to be broken up into multiple parcels, but it's intended to be viewed as one development, they've requested to allow off-site signs internal to the PD district property. This would allow them to have tenant signs that identify multiple tenants, whether or not the sign is located on the parcel where the actual tenant is located. So like a subdivision sign that would identify multiple businesses. That's really what that's intended to do. So provided all the LDC modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval to rezone 120.9 plus or minus acres of property from SFR 5 to PDG to allow for a mixed-use development, including residential, commercial, and institutional uses. A majority vote by the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission, and the item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission for first reading on February 7th and for second reading on February 21st, 2024. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, questions for staff? Okay. Brad?
With the area, I'm pretty familiar with the area, and it's a lot of wetlands. They show a large retention pond. Of course, this is all be worked out supposedly whenever they submit plans and drainage. Since it is wetlands, what is the city requiring as far as the wetlands go? Because I know I'm going through a process for this, the zoning city's requiring, the elevation of my pad for the house. So I'm assuming that to be requiring the same thing. What is the determination of where the runoff and everything is? Not that you're the engineer by any means, but I'm curious about that. And I'll ask when she's wagging her head. She says yes, she'll answer it.
Okay, perfect.
But with the city, since it is the wetlands, and the runoff there, it's very fragile, and the water table is not going to go down.
So we have multiple reviewers on staff when they come to platting and site development that look at stormwater, that look at wetlands and flood zones and how they're required to raise property. They're also required to comply with the state requirements as well. None of that's addressed right now as part of the PD rezoning process because this is more conceptual about the plan itself, but they will have to comply with all state requirements and city requirements, which the city has its own requirements, which I'm not entirely familiar with because I don't review it at the time of site
I
development.
see what the biggest problem out there, it's not that the stormwater and everything on the lot, it's the runoff and where are they gonna send it? So that'll be determined later, but I just figured I'd bring it up.
And they do have to, they always have to account for that. As I understand, they have to basically hold all the water within their site. They have to make sure that it's not going to negatively impact and run off on other properties, and that's a part of the review process.
Because see, a lot of people with the misconception, when you have a retention pond, that it's gonna hold, the water on the site. But when you dig a retention pond in a wet area, you gain no volume. And so that's the biggest issue. Okay, thank you.
Mr. McLean?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at this, Hannah, at least in the 3 years that I've been here, this item might have the most deviations from the LDC that I think I've ever seen. And the challenge is to come up with some sort of compromise where you say, okay, all these deviations make sense. You'd like to see some sort of compromise where you get this, and because you get this, we will go in another area, go beyond what the LDC is requiring, and you rarely see a circumstance like that. So I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable with the magnitude of the amount of deviations. Now, the counter to that is, you guys have been through this process. You're approving what's went on. You're obviously professionals and you're great at what you do. So we have to balance that as well. But I just want to make the statement to my fellow members that the sheer amount of deviation seems excessive to me. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson?
Maybe access points. Is that part of this area, or is it part of the other area?
So the access points, they are proposing that they will be compliant with the LDC at time of site development, but the required access points aren't determined until they decide what they're actually going to be developing. So this is all general. This is very conceptual as to the number, quantity, and where they will go. Once they go in to subdivide the property and then identify like specific what's going to be developed in specific areas, then that's when we get into the review of how many access points are required. They're just stating at this point in time, they will comply with what the LDC would require of them.
Also, the access points, in this case, LPJ Boulevard is a county facility, ISB is a state facility, so they have to get a use permit to be able to access those roads, so they have to go through that as well.
I'm just concerned about game day. Have you guys ever been on LPGA, trying to get on LPGA and ISB, trying to get to a game, or get from a game, or going to I-4, and the access point right there? The access points, and I'm trying to look at your
Diagram?
attachment D, trying to figure out where is where. How are they gonna get in and out of there, especially if it's an emergency? And are they gonna build when the roads get widened?
So oftentimes, once they identify the development program for the property and they identify what the traffic impacts are going to be, there are improvements that may be associated with those traffic impacts, and they take into account the situation that's going on in the surrounding area.
I'm uncomfortable with that maybe stuff, because you're saying that I should agree with your approval of this concept, which, like my associate says, I'm getting old, man.
Your buddy might.
My buddy says, the modifications, and I'm looking at the access points, and all that's entailed, and then the signage along that road, and the wetlands. Right now, you said, which I understand, that they will build a retention pond for their water. But the area that they're going to be building on used to be the area where the water is run off the, that's not gonna be there any longer. And one of the problems that I noticed in the last 2 hurricanes that we had with the flooding is that the water don't have where it used to go,
Nowhere to go.
don't go there anymore. It doesn't, you know, that can't go there anymore. So the city becomes like a flood zone. You know, I'm not a fan of building on wetlands or where water used to go, but now the water has nowhere to go. Where's that water gonna go? Where's all that traffic gonna go? And then, is this a commercial here? You know, I'll wait to hear from the applicant, but I like the drawing, it looks really beautiful. But all the modifications and all the,
So the engineering hasn't, at least from what staff is aware, we're unaware of any engineering that's occurred so far to understand how this would, move forward if they were to develop the site. But they do have to address the traffic. They do have to address the wetlands when they engineer the site, and it has to be compliant with what we would require, with what the state would require, and then with traffic, what the governing entities would require at the time that they do develop. And oftentimes it comes at a considerable cost to the developers.
Yeah. Now, I have a comment here, and looking at 120 plus acres here, and the amount of setbacks, and one of the words you've used probably maybe 100 plus times is reduction. Reduction is reduce setback, and some areas the zero lot line subdivision, and you're bringing everything down smaller and smaller. There's plenty of land out there to build appropriate and not have all these setbacks. So a lot of these things I'm gonna say no to, because absolutely, the height you're looking at, you're bringing the reduction of the sidewalk, this is just too many. So that's my concern with this project. I think it's a beautiful project, but I think they have conceptualized to put a lot more closer together and just too crammed up and not giving folks the space. Even the lot sizes reduced from 50 feet to 40 feet. I mean, just way too much. But let's hear from the applicant.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm limping because my foot fell asleep. Jessica Gao, Cobb Law Firm, 149 South Orchard Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. Good evening, happy holidays. Thank you to everyone who is here, and especially those of us who were here last night too. We are getting comfortable in this room right before Christmas. This site is uniquely situated, and I want to go over the history before I go over the concerns, because I knew there would be concerns. And so we want to walk through those. So this site, and I think we've talked about this on a few other LPGA sites as well in the past, used to be a development of regional impact. And so it was master planned for years and years and years. When that DRI expired, the entire swath of LPGA was transitioned over to the single-family residential zoning classification, but the master plan entitlement levels were reflected at the future land use level. And so that's why you see a retail hard corner here, level 2 residential, and then the level 1 to show that mixed-use center, some transitional, heavier density residential, and then the transitional back. That was the original master plan for the community. And so as we bring forward this PD, what we're doing is kind of recognizing that general pattern of development with that mixed-use core, and not changing anything on the land use level, because we want to respect that original pattern set forth in the DRI. I think it's a really exciting project, and I will talk about the modifications. I would say this is at least 6 years of lessons learned in terms of modifications. And I will say that this is not the most, because if you remember Project Oasis, that had a very lengthy modification list as well, because what you see through the plan development process is, one, when we give you our waivers or modifications, it's based on a comparison of the closest straight zoning category that's similar. So the single family zoning district, for the multifamily we use an MFR 12 district, and you go from there. There are zoning districts in this city, the BR2 zoning district, for instance, along the ISB corridor farther down, that have very loose standards. That if you were to do the modification requests based on those, we wouldn't have as many, because we're not comparing those the same. So part of it is just what you compare it to, but I think talking through all of them still makes sense. And so we've got the mixed use center here, and what you see with the traditional land development code is that it applies to parcel by parcel. And so in terms of integrating it to a functional town center, we have setbacks, and not setbacks, but development setbacks, which is that you don't have that natural flow that you want to see in those corridors when you have a 5-foot landscape buffer on each side that creates a hedge between this site and the next. There are cross-access requirements, but they're not robust. You don't have walkable, friendly communities. My favorite example of this is if you turn into Pollo Tropical on ISB, trying to get to Starbucks, can't get there. And nothing drives me more nuts, because it should connect. From a functional standpoint, that should connect, and it doesn't. And so creating that kind of downtown feel of a development, and this mixed core is the goal. And so when you see in terms of the multifamily setback reductions and building spacing it so that it can be closer to the restaurant beside it, it can be closer to the strip center retail beside it, so those residents living in those higher density uses that we want in the mixed use core don't have to walk as far. You know, they have that natural integration. They don't have to walk through a hedge, although they probably would. And then you've got a maintenance issue. And so that's part of it. I think on the bigger picture, we've really tried to respect the mixed use level 2 and then level 1. And so when you see the future land use breakdown, and Hannah had a map that we can pull up if you guys want, it's probably about 50 acres of level 1, 50 acres of level 2, and 20 acres of retail. You eyeball it. That density allowance, if you were to develop under the future land use, is 2,200 homes. And we all live, work, drive in the LPGA corridor. I don't think it needs 2,200 more homes right now. We had a robust neighborhood meeting about this site. And I have a funny note on a letter that we got from a resident outlining all of the uses she'd like to see in this town center. Nordstrom, PDQ would be nice. There's a restaurant list. So, you know, residents in this corridor, they definitely had questions about traffic and things like that. But going through, we said, if you look at the future land use, 2,200 homes, traditional development, large lot sizes. I'm going to challenge a little bit our chair on the standard development, because what you see in this development is 600 units overall, so reducing that by quite a bit below what is currently permitted, with that retail component already built in. The reduction from 50 to 40 for lot width is offset by an increase of 10 feet in depth. And so it's 40 by 110 instead of 50 by 100. And what that does is create the ability to either have a more activated front yard with front porch space and build placemaking, or a bigger backyard where people can have more room for their dogs, because that's all my generation cares about, is a bigger backyard for your dog. And we don't care about side yards, because that's just where your pool pump goes. The the difference on the townhomes is it's 4,400 square feet. It's 16 by 75. And so the land development standard is 16 by 100. So the 16 by 75, the townhomes are in the level 2 kind of medium density portion, where that 75 feet is squeezed between wetland systems on the site. And so instead of having a deeper townhome lot that doesn't need that space in the backyard, you can preserve wetlands and have robust open space within the development that still gives the residents that amenity. I do want to clarify the parking reduction to 1.5 is only for standard multifamily. The PD states it is not applying to cottage or townhome. And what we do there is a lot of these things we either see, like all of the cottage waivers, as an amendment coming back. So you get 4 waivers at a time to say this is what we want to move forward. Like I said, lessons learned, we're giving you all at once to create this master plan to 120 acres based on what we've seen in other projects. The 1.5 spaces per unit, we could say 2 and then go through the site plan and say we're reducing based on proximity to transit, we're reducing based on bicycle facilities, we're reducing based on the mixed use nature of our site, and we get to 1.5, and then people feel like we haven't been transparent, because there's administrative modifications we can apply, but instead of applying them, we're just saying for multifamily we're going to use 1.5. We want you guys to see that. We know how it lays out. That was a lot, I'm going to say. And I'm here to answer any questions, but actually I want to go to the retention wetlands. I touched on wetlands a little bit. You can see them hashed on the concept plan. This has taken a similar approach to Oasis. Again, the last master plan, large site we've seen like this, where we're trying to amenitize wetland systems on site. We're trying to respect nature in that balance and carve out residential areas that complement it, respect it, but preserve that space for that use. This site has a mix of wetlands and lots of high and dry areas, lots of ridges. We have actually had 2 meetings with DOT and their LPGA corridor planning because they've targeted our hard corner where our stormwater is for their dream stormwater location. And so we've met with them twice. We're going over the modeling they need for the improvements to LPGA that they currently have planned out so that we can help accommodate the need for compensatory storage and stormwater within our site in the master plan. So we've had 2 really good meetings with them. We're waiting on some modeling this week actually to start building that into the development program. So we will not only store all of our water on site, we will keep all of the water that currently flows in because we can't divert it under the rules, and we will work with DOT to fit their needs here on the site. And so this is a conceptual layout, but we are having those real discussions on how that drainage flows and operates. And with that, question?
I'm ready.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to see you put 2,200 homes on that property.
Apartments.
Yeah, it might be allowed as far as land-wise, but not, not the type land, there's no drainage on there, and it would be impossible to do. Just making that point.
Get a nice vault in there.
The wetlands, I'm sure this is going to have to go through St. John's. The problem is with Daytona, you build a development like this, it looks beautiful on paper, really does. I think it's, the setback requirements, I think it's, I'll just say maxed out. But the problem with an area like this, especially with the weather and the climate that we're having now, is once this is built, it gets to be the city problem. The developer's gone, you're gone, and the city's stuck with it. We have a lot of areas here in Daytona right now, the same thing is happening here in the city. Older areas that were high and dry. Now, with all the development around them, there's no drainage on this property, never will. It'll never drain. It's just the way the soil is. And so it creates a problem for the city and, and everybody else. The city of Daytona is stuck with it. The developer's gone, and so I think that I understand on the development part. I am a developer. And I want to get the maximum money out of a piece of property. But I think that sometimes we're looking on a project like this and we're going to the extreme.
I think this is well under what this property could be. And I did tell the engineer he could have the night off for his family Christmas, so I apologize for that. But we do have Emilio, although he's a planner, not an engineer. I know I say it a lot with Zev Cohen, who might weigh in, but we have to meet all of the requirements in terms of stormwater. The modern rules can't be modified under a PD, and your city would never allow us to modify stormwater or compensating storage needs because it's so important to our community. And so this site will not only treat ourselves, but we'll also work with DOT to make sure that we can expand LPGA Boulevard, which we need for our community. And so we'll definitely build all of that into the site.
Because, holding the amount of water that this is going to create with no runoff, it's always a question on any development, where's the runoff to? And I think it's maxed out. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, Mr. McGlee?
Thank you. Jessica, just a kind of a request comment and then a question, please. And I'm very pleased that a lot of these items that we're considering have communication towers as a permitted use.
Sure.
We have one that's going up near the fire station as we speak, preliminarily talking about one at the utility station near the stadium, and gosh, a third one right at 92 and LPGA. I think just the link would be good. So I'm just bringing that up publicly for your consideration.
This is always where my Zoom calls drop when I'm driving to DeLand, so I agree with you.
Okay, there you go, perfect. And let me just and I agree with your comparison to Oasis. I agree, that was right in the same ballgame. I was uncomfortable with that one too, so your point's well taken. I'll give you an example of one of the items, the deviations that's on here. At this point, obviously, the applicant doesn't know whether they're going to put self-storage in their project, where they're going to put it, under what circumstances. We're not at that point yet. But even though we're not at that point yet, we're talking about reducing setbacks on something that we don't even know what's going to happen or if it's going to happen. And there's a number of things I could point to that kind of fit in that category. And that is causing me a little heartburn about this from a totality standpoint. Could you address that, please?
Yeah, so, and I'll use the specific of the self-storage and give you just a little bit background on the
Okay.
process we've been through. On the self-storage, again, you've got those future land use pockets for retail, level 2 and level 1. And so for self-storage, it's really a question of, do we think in a town center, a small self-storage use that complies with the LPGA and ISB design standards might be appropriate? And that's why it's spaced out to 300, because if you go beyond that, it falls outside of that retail future land use. And so that distance is so that it could be developed on site in that mixed use corridor. If you guys say self-storage isn't appropriate for that use, we'll take that feedback and go back. For full disclosure, this site started under a different applicant. They had a contract purchaser who was looking at it, who had a very specific development regime. They had tenants interested. They had, home builders who were looking at the site. That development team dropped the contract, hit a bump, whatever it is. Then the owner going. I still want to continue those conversations with those users, but it's not as solid as what it once was, but we're trying to kind of close that gap, keep it going, and get this work done. So that you have that master plan and it's built into the future land use, because right now, you've got a retail future land use in a single-family zoning district, and that just doesn't make sense. So someone is going to have to come along and change it. And so this, more than any site, I say, is definitely open to the feedback, we don't want you to have deeper lots. We want you to have the 50. Okay, if you make that a part of your recommendation, we'll go talk to the applicant about it and see what we can do. If you don't like self-storage in it, absolutely let us know, and we'll talk to the applicant about taking it out. And so we're absolutely happy to have those discussions, but I'll just say that it's been kind of thought out, paced through, and all of these modifications, and I know we talk about them a lot, none of them are new. They've all been approved on other projects in Daytona Beach. I don't really write waiver benefit letters anymore. I copy and paste and change the property because we've done these pieces everywhere.
Well, since you asked the question, I'll answer it. As far as self-storage is concerned, I'm not comfortable
Sure.
with the change to 300 feet. In fact, if it was up to me, I don't think that is a use that should be in the top considerations for the applicant, in my opinion. But thank you for putting it in that way. I appreciate it.
Mr. Fear,
Oh, okay, Mr. Robinson.
beautiful picture. I love the picture. However, what I noticed, and you brought up Oasis, and you do a lot of cut and paste from that, and you use that as an example. But what the developers have not learned is the lessons that nature has taught us environmentally. They have not looked at, okay, we built Oasis, and what did Oasis create?
Nothing yet.
But it does, because we have a lot of flooding in other areas. And when you look at your development, and you're looking at building your development, you're trying to maximize the profits. That's what developers do, okay? Without looking at the impact, right? The environmental impact on the city, on the other areas. And I don't think that with this design, it's not showing me the lessons learned from the hurricanes, from the wetlands, from the green space, and the environmental impact that this development, and you say, well, we approve Oasis. This is only 600 homes. And Oasis was, I probably wasn't here,
850,
850.
I think.
But maybe we ought not to look at Oasis and says, oh yeah, let's use it as an example. Let's be more proactive and say, let's go way below that to see how we preserve the future for the generation and also for the our clients that's going to be moving in there. Because if I was to buy somewhere in this nice, beautiful concept, and it starts to flood, I'd be a little bit angry. And if on game day, I cannot leave my subdivision because of the traffic, you know, and also the traffic going to I-4, coming off I-4, you know, I'd be a little bit upset that I spent all this money from.
And we
then, you know,
want happy residents, and I'll just say,
we're not looking at the impact. You're bringing me a beautiful, nice concept with all the modifications, if we approve the modifications.
right.
Okay? But you're not looking at the lesson. You have not shown me the lesson that you've learned from the 2 hurricanes that just devastated the city. What, 2 years ago, a year ago?
A year and a half ago,
Right.
yeah, or so.
And how the climate is changing and how everything is changing. We're not looking at that. We're just building, and it's, you know, an LPGA is kind of built out. And you're saying, hey, down the street, there's another subdivision coming in. Well, we ought to look at that and says, all right, let's see what impact is when we build ours.
So I'll say that it's more of a global discussion point in a little bit. There's a lot we could say there.
I understand.
And in general, I'll say that the impacts are reviewed. And I think that I'd agree with anyone to say that the LPGA corridor is going through growing pains. This neighborhood meeting was a good 2 hours or so, at least, of some really robust and good discussion on the LPGA corridor, improvements coming in, Dunn Avenue coming in, Grand Champion Signal, all of the planned improvements. Since then, of course, the LPGA corridor plan has come in. We've coordinated with DOT on that. And so there's no piece of what you've said that is not looked at, definitely in depth, and not even by us, because you've said developers want to profit. We're showing a large amount of wetland conservation on here. I think it is a sensitive development layout that, you know, kind of checks the boxes in terms of the plan for this area, but I'll defer to your planning staff on that. But it's something that we look at in depth. When you look at traffic, we say, how can we create internal capture? How can we create this commercial node so that not everyone who lives in LPGA is going to the Publix up at Timber Creek, where everyone complains because traffic is bad? They can split. Half of them go there, half of them go to another hub. You've got some restaurant uses in there that they say they really need in that corridor. And again, we've got residents excited about the potential uses that could go in that corridor. On ISB, you've got an interchange modification coming. That's a fully developer-funded improvement that the commission approved last night that creates a new I-492 interchange connection to kind of ease up some of those traffic concerns. And so my favorite statistic, and I don't know if you guys know, I'm vice chair of the Volusia Forever Advisory Committee at the county level. We're a land conservation buying body, is that when you look at dedicated conservation easements, conservation land, and mitigation banks in Volusia County, a third of our total county acreage is conserved forever for future generations. My favorite statistics. But could be better. We could keep going to a half. We tax our voters in order to do that and buy that land. But we also have to plan for growth and future development. And this plan lays out exactly in line with those lines on your future land use map of what we've planned for this area and how we plan for that using growth and drainage and flooding. We're going to comply with all of those standards. And so definitely there's some growing pains around growth and development, especially when you look at older developments that may not have been developed to the standard that they are these days. But that's why I said at the beginning, lessons learned. Kind of pull in all those planning principles and lessons and you implement them.
Okay, and Jessica, I know you said something about, just to go back a little bit, from 50 feet to 40 feet, you added to the back from, instead of 100 is 110. But I'm looking at, you're going from 5,000 square feet to 4,400 square feet for the LDC lot criteria, single-family home, then you're going from 2,000 to 1,200. So you're actually shrinking this place and giving your dog less room to run in the backyard. So I just want to bring that out. The other thing is, it's a lot of growing pain in that whole corridor. And especially, we know that everybody has to pay their fair share act in order for the roads to be built and all the good things. The bridge, we talked about that at the last meeting. So there's a lot going on. But looking at this particular project, my concern is simply all the setbacks that's being required and requested for the project to be built. And that is a concern in all the areas. So I think that needs to be, from my perspective, need to be looked at. And that is one of my concerns about this project.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
might
sir.
just kind of summarize some of the discussion that we've had. I mentioned about the cell tower. You guys know it's my little pet thing. Your discussion about re-examining lot size and setbacks, particularly with the residential, perhaps re-examining the idea of self-storage as well, and to discuss the idea of building, whether it's residential or commercial, to create that additional green space for environmental impacts, to even go a little beyond that 1/3 that, which is impressive, there's no question about it. I guess my question, maybe Dennis, this might be addressed to you or perhaps David, is these items, it appears to have concerns among the body. Do we, if we want to have those addressed, deny this item with the idea of putting that information to Jessica and let her take that to the applicant to bring it back?
Yeah, the applicant could make the determination that they're going to agree to those conditions in your approval, or the applicant would have to agree to it because it's a planned development.
And if not, if Jessica's not in a position to do that, I'm not putting you in that one, to give them the opportunity, the way we would give her the opportunity to discuss that is deny this item tonight with the conditions of these are the items we want to have considered, have the item come back with those items addressed, we bring it up at that point. Am I missing something?
As the applicant, and I think we ran into this recently with, hit the deck, the Grandview parking garage, right? We had a very long discussion, and we said, maybe not the parking garage, but the surface lot we like. And then there was a motion to deny, and that condition didn't move forward. And so we heard you, but the record just says deny the whole project. So as the applicant and moving forward from that step, it's better for us if you say, we will approve it based on the condition that you review removing self-storage, modifying these setbacks, and doing this, so that we can take that and move forward and say, commission, these were their concerns, here's how we address them, and here's how we maybe couldn't meet this one. And so that is better to us.
But then how do we know how much modification, how much you have modified to please this board versus the commission board? And again, they look at the recommendation from this particular board.
Right.
That would be a concern.
Well, if you deny it, it doesn't come back to you either.
Right. Well,
But ultimately, the board is advisory, so, it's up to the applicant what they want to present.
right.
You could certainly present a motion to condition your approval on seeing those criteria altered. But ultimately, whether the applicant's going to accept those, it'd be up to the applicant.
It's certainly up to them, of course.
If
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, there's just a couple of points that I wanted to make, and just to maybe to help the board feel a little bit more comfortable. Mr. Weatherholtz, you were talking about the stormwater and the engineering. This is a zoning level, so we don't have the engineering on that yet.
Correct.
Back a few years ago, the City Commission changed the Land Development Code to not require the engineering to be done with the plan development. They said, we'll go with just a base plan, knowing that they have to go through that engineering in the future. Now, not to speak in absolutes, but to say that they never will be able to do it, they have to have that opportunity to be able to do it, and they're going to have to do the engineering to be able to get there. And if they can't do it, then they can't do it, but we won't know that until they actually get to that point with that engineering. So they are required, they can't skip any steps over there. They are required to meet all of those standards. So that was one of the points that I wanted to make. The other one was lessons learned. We're talking about development and how development occurs in a city. Homes built in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. You only have to take a look at some of the areas here in the Midtown area of Daytona Beach, all underwater. Why? Because we didn't know the lessons that we know today about what happens when we have these storm events. We've got some new development out there on the west side of the city. Mr. McLean, how much flooding did you have during the hurricanes?
Yeah, not a thing.
None. So there are lessons learned now that weren't in place before, and those are the same lessons that they're going to have to apply when they develop this. So I just wanted to throw those out there for you, and just for thought process. But
Mr. Dennis, the older homes, the older subdivisions, right? What lessons did we learn when we put up we have an old subdivision and we have the new subdivision? Where the water used to go, it doesn't go there anymore. It stays put. So what is our mitigation factors are we gonna mitigate to keep the rest of the city from flooding? Because now the water doesn't go anywhere. In the last hurricane, when you drive down ISB, and I looked over to, what's the name of that park?
Tuscarora Park.
Tuscarora Willow Park, and I'm saying, wait a minute, that's not a river. Water never used to go there, right? What lessons did we learn with all this, with all the development that we are approving? And it's not so much a development, but where the developments that we are approving are located, okay? Where those are the lessons that we're not taking into consideration. We're not taking into consideration now that the hurricanes, they never used to come land in Daytona Beach. They rarely did. And now they're coming in from the beach on Daytona instead of coming in from the Gulf. So now we have to take those factors into consideration. And the older homes, right? Okay, what lessons did we learn? And what lessons do we learn for the next generation? Do we still continue building so the next generation doesn't have what is there now? You know, that's what I'm talking about. What lessons do we learn? How much green space should we have? What are the mitigation factors that we should have for the wetlands? What are the environmental factors that we should have? Not so much that, oh, I'm building a 400 feet sign compared to a 100 feet sign. You know, if you build a 400 feet sign and the hurricane comes in, where's that sign gonna go? You know, what lessons have you learned from that? Those are what I'm talking about. And if I say that I want to approve this concept, right, I want to trust the developers to come in and say, oh yeah, we'll do it. And then what if they say, oh no, we're not going to do it?
Yeah, well, one of the other things I've learned also from those hurricanes, LPGA, there were areas that were also flooded within the subdivisions out there. So I was driving around in there and almost got stuck a couple times. So it happens out there too. All right, I do have Ms. Ann, thank you very much. I do have Ms. Ann Ruby that would like to speak for this item. Again, you'll have 3 minutes if you come, state your name and address for our record, please.
Okay, and Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. One of the things that's the backup for you is it says there has to be address a demonstrated community need, and that's an attachment B. And then when you go read attachment B, it talks about revitalization and economic development, but it's going to revitalize vacant land, and that goes directly to what Mr. Robinson was talking about. We need those trees to absorb the rainwater so that Midtown doesn't flood. So I question whether putting a subdivision out there is a revitalization of vacant land. It doesn't make any sense. The other public benefit they're saying is it's the diversity of housing type. It's market rate. We don't need more, we may need more market rate housing, but the real community need is for affordable housing. So these PD agreements are supposed to address community needs. And this one, every time they put in the same ridiculous language, there's nothing specific. And it's time that people started paying attention to that. That came up yesterday night. The other thing is, you know, there's no flooding where you live, probably because, you know, we're a bowl. Midtown's the bottom of the bowl. You live higher up on the rim. It's not just because we learned lessons. I mean, that matters. But one of the lessons we don't seem to be learning is that trees matter, vacant land matters, and flooding is not going to go away if we cover everything up. And we need to build incredibly dense places we're going to build. Because that's one of the ways to address the affordable housing issue and making the best use of our land. Up, not out. So the other thing is just passing recommendations, somewhat problematic. Did that on the Nova Plaza. The Midtown Redevelopment Board wanted 3 uses out. They passed it saying, we want those 3 uses out. You passed it, we want those 3 uses out. It got to commission. Those 3 uses are still in there. They didn't take them out. So I stood up and said, they didn't want these uses, and apparently they took them out. You pass with recommendations. They don't necessarily have to be addressed at all ever. So it's frustrating. You hear PD after PD get approved and discussed, when there isn't a defined benefit, clear and specific for this development. Always economic development, revitalization. That's big, big promises. Nothing.
Thank you. Is there anyone else would like to speak for or against this item? Oh, okay. If you would do me a favor and please just fill out a green form. And again, when you come, just state your name and address for our record. No, you could go ahead and do it and then fill it out. You could do it after.
Okay, good. We trust you.
My name is Christopher Mangum. I live at 1114 Pacific Dunes Court. I directly border what they're proposing. I have a great concern. The reason I bought where I did, moved in there about 1.5 years ago, we have woods behind us. And we knew that they were going to develop a second division behind us, quite a space behind us, which they are doing now. But the concern is, if you look at the layout of this proposal, it is wrapping right behind us. And I am literally right where you see those homes behind the red line. So my thought is, what are they really going to do there? Yeah, they've drawn green and water, but is that really what they plan to do there? Since I've been there, I have seen 3 large black bears killed on the road. I have seen countless deer, countless animals, and it's heartbreaking because I know that the development is pushing them away, pushing them into my neighborhood. We now have coyotes that we have to deal with. And I guess it goes back to that thought of what does it serve? You know, yeah, it's nice to say, oh, this gives us another place to shop and another place to do this. But as I think someone else mentioned, anytime you go to a football game there, I have had times where I've had to wait 3 hours to get to my home. There is no way out. Once you start on LPGA, you have to go all the way to the other end to get out. There's no other way. Dunn Avenue doesn't come through. I know they were planning it one time, maybe. I know there's another road from another development that may come through. And so my concern is, as you continue to build developments, now we're looking at 3 that they're proposing, one by the water plant, one by the fire station, and this one, you would just be compounding what is already an issue. And yes, when it rains behind me, there's water. There's water that runs behind me. Yes, they set up all this environmental sectioning. They did a wildlife protection zone behind my house. My house dips off like this so that the water runs somewhere. But at some point, you're like, okay, if you just keep building more and more, like someone else said, the water is going to get to the point where it doesn't have, I don't care how many little lakes and things they build, it will get to a point where there's nowhere to go. It's going to flood, and it still does. We get flooding down by the stadium there. When it rains, that water comes almost all the way up to the road. And as someone else mentioned, when we had the flooding from the hurricanes, there was a river running down ISB. Where's that going to go if they cover it up? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Jessica? Okay.
Just to respond to a few of his questions, in terms of the road along Pacific Dune, the hatching there along the border is a different color than the wetlands, but that's the green space border. So it's green space and then wetlands, and then the homes are actually on the other side by Bell Island, which is part of the INA subdivision that reaches all the way down there. That will be constructing Dunn Avenue. There's a lot to be. And so that's coming in soon. The Grand Champaign signal's going in. Seeing those improvements that we've all talked about along the way, I do just want to note, in terms of drainage and tree preservation and all of that, we're meeting your land development code requirements. Voice is a concern. We've gotten great feedback on a lack of modification of other requirements that we'd want to see. But I think a lot of the discussion has been drainage, tree preservation, and all of that. We're meeting the rules there. And so I hear the concern. We can go above and beyond. I think this plan does, and we can demonstrate that numerically as it moves forward. But we are meeting those requirements. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. I don't have anyone else for or against this item. All right. May I have a motion, please?
Oh, this is going to be fun. Provided all LDC modifications are accepted and with the conditions of considering a telecommunications tower on the property, re-examine the lot size and setback for residential uses, re-examining self-storage uses on the property, and taking into consideration building decisions to create additional green space and reduce environmental impacts, move approval of agenda item number 7, Plan Development General Rezoning, DEV 2023-028, Etrata, PD. I did my best.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie.
Now, everybody understand what you're voting on?
Roll call,
Okay? Yeah. All right, let's do a roll call, please.
please, Mr. Chair.
All righty.
And let me make sure that this is with, you're requesting it with the modification, with
Yes, I am.
stuff. Okay.
With those conditions, sir, yes.
Not as it's written in here.
That is correct.
Okay?
Mr. Barhu,
Yes.
Mr. McLean,
Yes.
Mr. Newman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
No,
Mr. Cervantes absent, Mr. Weatherholtz,
No.
and Ms. Washington, yes. 1, 2,
Okay, so it's 4-2.
2. Right. We have 4
And that's
to 2.
with, again,
With those
Those,
conditions.
those
With the
conditions will be,
modifications.
yeah, those conditions will be included in the report that goes to the city commission, and we'll have the list of that. And we'll work with the applicant if they're going to make any changes before that, as it gets to the city commission.
Very good, Dennis. Thank you.
okay?
Thank you, Jess.
All right, item number 8, please, Ms. Washington.
Item number 8. ISB and Williamson Southeast Redevelopment, PDG rezoning, DEV 2023-076, quasi judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
And award planning. Right. This is also a request by Jessica Gao with Cobb Cole on behalf of Boyce Realty Group, who's the property owner, and it's to rezone 2.1 acres located at 2375 West International Speedway Boulevard from the Delaware North Planned Commercial Development to a new planned development to allow for the establishment of additional commercial uses within the existing structure on the property and to allow future redevelopment of the property. Site is located at the, this is from the previous project, at the southeast corner of ISB and Williamson. The aerial view reflects that the site is fully developed. It currently contains vacant rooms to go structure that's now moved out to Boca Town Center. The future use on the property is commercial amusement. The zoning is planned development general, and they are proposing to go to a new planned development general zoning district. So the an original PD for the property was approved in 1992 by the City Commission, and it was for 2 parcels, 2375 West ISB, which is the rooms to go structure, and then 2325 West ISB, which is currently the Cracker Barrel. And the PD only specifically allowed for the 17,000 square foot retail facility and then the 11,000 square foot restaurant. Those are the only uses permitted. In 2022, Rooms to Go closed at this location, and then they moved out to Boca Town Center. Now the retail facility is vacant, and the restaurant is obviously still an establishment. So they've requested to rezone just the parcel that contains the Rooms to Go to a new PD. No LDC modifications are requested as part of this application. They are just requesting to allow additional commercial use. No residential uses are proposed. They're proposing a maximum floor area ratio of 3, which is consistent with land use. They have identified a number of uses. This was not included in the staff report, but the applicant did identify that they would be eliminating 3 of the uses that were identified in that list, which includes dry cleaning and laundry drop-off service, meat, poultry, and seafood market, and secondhand retail uses. I have the existing PD plan up for the property. This basically just shows the layout of the site. It's got a circular vehicular pattern, and the building is in the center. These are photos of the existing development showing the existing structure, landscaping, the existing sign, and then the architectural structure of the building that's proposed to currently remain. They're just trying to fill the vacancy in the existing structure. They have identified a proposed PD plan for the property, which contemplates the locations of parking areas and a potential building, but this is still conceptual and subject to future redevelopment. To mind, no modifications to the code are requested, so they will have to come forward with a fully compliant plan if they choose to develop the site. They're just requesting to keep the site in its current condition because it is fully developed right now. So staff recommends approval to rezone 2.1 acres of property located at 2375 West ISB from the Delaware North PD to the new PD to allow for additional commercial uses within the structure and to allow for future development. Majority vote by the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission, and the item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the city commission for first reading on February 7th and second reading on February 21st, 2024. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, Hannah, you said three things to remove: dry cleaning,
Yes.
secondhand retail.
And the meat, poultry, and seafood market.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Questions for staff?
None.
Nope. Thank you very much. May we hear from the applicant?
I do.
Oh, hold on,
Yes.
Mr. Newman.
Just for clarification, on page 8 of the report, there is a list of uses.
Uh-huh.
Actually, it goes on to page 9. And those will be the uses allowed?
Those will be uses minus the three that were identified in my presentation. That was suggested by the applicant at the last minute. Unfortunately, the email, I didn't read the email, the right email that showed that information. So it didn't get into the staff report. Went through my emails again today and saw this and was like, okay, I got to make sure it gets in here.
Thank you.
Thank you. May we hear from the applicant, please?
And perhaps for the last time, Jessica Gao, Cobb Law Firm, 149 South Woodruff Avenue, Florida. Study in opposites. This one is no modifications to the land development code. I give a shout out to Kimley Horn, our engineers on that one. They told me I didn't have to write a waiver benefit letter. Wow. So this one is unique, similar to, well, that one hasn't come before you guys yet. There are some sites in Daytona Beach that had very specific development plans in a which I think is why we got away from those fully engineered site plans and plan development, because then Rooms to Go moves out to Tanger. What do they do with the property that's left? And so this really opens the site up for just some, more commercial uses. We saw those uses that were taken out at the end. We reviewed the use list and had some discussions with staff with Rose. We said these aren't really the uses that we want to recommend: the dry cleaning, poultry, and secondhand retail. If there are any other feedback on the use list, we'll be happy to hear it and discuss with the property owner. But this really does one of two things. It allows the Rooms to Go building to be developed into something other than Secret Halloween, although I love Secret Halloween. And then it allows for the redevelopment of another configuration. We've got a concept showing what that could be. With that, your question.
Okay, questions? No? All right.
Comfortable.
Thank
you. Do I have anyone that would like to speak for item number 8, for or against it? Nope. Now have a motion, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, move approval, agenda item number 8, Plan Development General, rezoning, DB 2023-076, ISB in Williamson Southeast Redevelopment PD.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposers have the same right. Carries. Thank you very much. Item number 9, please.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Item number 9, Lockhart Storage, Major Site Plan, DEV 2022-211, Quasi Judicial Hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Good evening, planning board members. My name is Paula. I'm a planner with the city. Now we're going to get to the actual, forget about conceptual. This is the site plan. You don't have to think about, is it going to happen, is it not going to happen? This is what they're presenting for development tonight.
All right.
And I'm here to represent a request by Kevin Roberson of Kimley Horn and Associates, Inc., on behalf of James Lockhart of HLSS3 Daytona LLC, to approve a major site plan to construct 760 units of self-storage use among 5 buildings on 104,200 523 plus or minus square feet of land, inclusive of associated site improvements, totaling 10.71 acres of land. The site is located south of LPGA, west of Champions Drive, and north of Tournament Drive. The aerial here does show that the current condition is vacant and undeveloped. Future land use for the property is mixed use. We do have to the north, low-intensity urban, to the east and the west, additional mixed use, and then a little bit bordering on the southern area, level 1 residential. Current zoning is planned development general. Obviously, it's already a part of a PD, part of the Timber Creek plan development. All of the area is planned development. We do have some SFR 5, which is single-family residential 5 zoning to the south. This project actually, just to give you a little background, was approved as a part of the Timber Creek Plan Development District in August of 2020. The agreement was originally approved by the commission, allowing for the development of a variety of uses, inclusive of the self-storage. On the cover sheet for their site plan, which was a part of the packet that you received, they listed out all of the different projects that they are planning, and some are already in development because the site plans have already been approved. This storage use is actually the last item on that list, and that is what we are here to discuss tonight. As I mentioned already, there are 5 buildings that are going to be constructed there. 760 units of self-storage is what we are considering tonight. 523 plus or minus square feet of land, inclusive again of the site improvements totaling 10.71 acres. Because of the size, the square footage there being 104,523 plus or minus square feet of gross floor area, it does require your approval. This is a plan of the overall site. You'll be able to see some of the other lots that are a part of the Timber Creek Plan development, and the lower left quadrant is actually where this project is going in. A zoom in of the project, you can be able to see, and of course this was included as a part of your packet, the 5 buildings that are being developed there. Of course, we don't have a pointer, but hopefully it will help me out. The top section is where Building A is located. Then below it is where Building B is located. And then the other 3 are literally wrapped around the property. To the to the west there is Building C. Below, to the south is D, and then E is a narrow shaped, actually a flag-shaped building to the east there. Included also are the proposed elevations there, so you can get an idea of what that's going to look like. I believe that the applicant does have some other plans that they're going to show you as a part of their presentation. As we know, some details on the project, we're always really concerned about the parking. We do want to make sure to remind about this particular location. We have a study that was actually conducted. You did receive a copy of that study as an attachment B in your packet that described the types of parking that are actually needed for this type of development. City requirement does require more parking. However, we do ask for studies to be done in situations such as this, and it was actually discovered that there weren't actually as many parking spaces needed because it is self-storage. In addition to that, as we looked, let me go back a little bit, we can see where the entrances and exits are going to be. There are 2 entrances that are actually going to be coming in off of the private road that is going to connect to LPGA. In addition to that, there's going to be some what is it called? Sidewalks. Yes, it's late in the evening. So sidewalks that are actually going to go along that private road, connect to the property, into the property, to Building A, into their internal system. In addition to that, the landscaping project, or I should say the landscaping plan, actually was included again as a part of your packet that you get received. That landscape plan does meet requirements for their plan development as well as LDC requirements. There are a couple of conditions that do have to be satisfied prior to site plan approval letter being issued. There is a proportionate fair share payment that will have to be satisfied. If you'll recall, it's a very big project. There's multiple pieces going into that. There is a master prop share that is a part of this project. Each project that's being developed, each site plan that comes forward will have to submit an implementation memorandum for each of their separate projects, and this project is no different. It will have to be satisfied prior to site plan approval letter being issued. In addition to that, they will have to demonstrate compliance with connectivity and the fire lines between buildings D and E. Again, sometimes we have conditions that they have to satisfy before they can get site plan approval, and this is one of them. In addition to that, we have to make sure that the certificate of occupancy for this site, so this is two things, not just the site plan approval, but certificate of occupancy will not be issued until the infrastructure for this site is in place to accommodate this use. So do know that it's not just going to happen randomly. It's going to happen without there being approval for the CO, or we're going to sign off. No, that's not going to happen. Provided all outstanding conditions are resolved, staff recommends approval for the Lockhart storage site plan to allow for the construction of 104,223 plus or minus square feet of self-storage use, inclusive of associated site improvements on 10.71 plus or minus acres of land. This does conclude staff's report, and the applicant is available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, Paula. I'm looking at the parcel here, and it's a little funky with up and down. And I noticed there's just a small little area that goes up to LPGA. Is this project accessible from LPGA?
Yes. So, and again, Hojo can help me out with that little pointer there. There is a private road that actually is in between. On this particular slide, you can see that there are some parcels up on the left-hand side, but straight up and to the right of those three parcels is that private road. And that's going to come down and then come across, and then those are where the two entrances are going to be there, and then that's the second. So that is where there will be.
Okay, and so the only way in and out is going to be off LPGA. Am I understanding you correctly?
I believe that's accurate. However, the applicant is here to address that. This is what we plan.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, hold on a second. Mr. Benford?
I was looking for the community benefits.
So this is the site plan level.
Site plan level? Okay, so we don't need it.
Correct. All of that has already been discussed as a part of the plan development agreement that was already approved.
So what happens when at this particular major site plan approval, and within the PD, all of this was listed, and now we're looking back on that, we disagree with
This is based on the PD agreement and the land development code. The applicant has submitted an application that is in 100% compliance with the PD agreement and with the land development code, and they've done what we've asked them to do and what they've been approved to do.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Along the LPGA corridor?
Speak into the microphone.
Yeah, this is part of the Timber Creek development that was approved by the City Commission about 2 years ago, which actually goes back to about the 1990s when it was part of the original approval for the LPGA area.
Okay, thank you very much. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening. My name is Kevin Robertson. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates. I have Mr. Lockhart here, Lockhart, owner and developer. We don't actually have a formal presentation to give. Working with staff for well over a year to get to the point. Staff approval. I did want to address, however, Rosick, we are complying with all of the requirements of the village as well as the development. Of the three conditions, I want to give an update. We're about to submit the building permit. So with respect to the fire line connection building. That will be forthcoming to you. It's actually on page FP1.1D. That will show in the building permits that the those buildings actually. The other condition I wanted to bring forward is proportionate fair share. We are working through one last issue currently. Volusia County to be able to pay that, but we'll pay that here in about 2 weeks. And the last one is the site is actually currently under construction, the master development site. So what you see there before you, that's actually the pad of the building site. There's a pond between this residence south that's already actually been placed, graded out, and sodded. The other buildings, they're in the top of the page, Starbucks. So off to the right there, that's the connection to LPG Boulevard that was asked earlier. There's also 3 other connections to Boulevard off of this loop road. So there's access.
So there'll be a total of 4, Kevin, is what you're telling me?
4 access.
Very good. Thank you.
That's all I have for the moment. We're here to answer questions you might have.
So, quick one, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Thank you, sir. Just a comment or two on your parking survey. I don't think I've seen anyone go through the amount of detail on 6 pages worth over 21 parking spaces, so I'll give you credit for asking, if nothing else. What I want to ask is, I know you based the using the demand on 2 consecutive Tuesdays, and I can only say this from someone who's had self-storage more than I care to admit, is the times that I would go in there wasn't on Tuesdays, it would be on the weekend. I'd be there on Saturday or Sunday. Now, I don't know if those numbers would have been bigger. I would suspect they might be, but that wasn't done, and that's fine. Obviously, you had a relationship with the 2 self-storage facilities that you used as your basis for this potential one. I'm curious was there any discussion with them to ask the amount of parking that you have, has it been adequate, as opposed to just using numbers and we'll see if it makes sense?
Yes. So glad you asked that question. They're actually both Lockhart managed projects, both Florida, South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly enough, or not oddly enough, both of the parking that were approved on both of those projects are comparable to. And the study was done on that weekday, which actually was traffic on the roadway. That total amount of parking is comparable.
And it sounds like you had those types of discussions with the with management of those 2 facilities, that for them to say, yeah, that's what we have. It is there.
It's there.
Okay. Please.
Just your name.
My name is Brian Fulton. Work with Lockhart Storage. We tend to have similar number of trips generated on a Tuesday. The difference being commercial tenant, someone who's local painter or plumber or something like that.
Sure.
They're going to be there on the Tuesdays. More commercial tenants out on Tuesday. Get more residential tenants.
Point taken. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But definitely, the current level mirrors what we experience at all our other sites.
And there's been no one's been debating that it's been inadequate. Good enough. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
I was going to say to James Lockhart, thank you guys. Great Merry Christmas. One thing I will tell you is that we've built, I think we're on number 26 planning, but one of the things for sure on the parking is the ghost town. We want to make sure that our people have a place to park. Just found that over the years. I mean, I've sold another building down in Palm Beach County, and we sold in almost every county in the state. But from a parking standpoint, we're doing it because we know the business well, and we appreciate the question. But I was going to say too, if there are any issues, they can always park on LPGA Boulevard. Just kidding. But I do think one of the things is that when you look at self-storage, and if you look at the site plan, it has multiple buildings. So when you look at the access from a parking standpoint, the only reason that people park is to sign up. Well, what would you say, Brian, our sign online?
We tend to have less than what the study is, maybe 12 to 14 tenants a day.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, we tend to have 12 to 14 tenants a day come in, so it's actually less than what the study is typically. You tend to have more in the very beginning, obviously. As it fills up and you get closer to 90% occupancy after 2 years, you average much lower tenants. I mean, 3 or 4 parking spaces is really all you need once you're.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, isn't this designed so if somebody's got their car, they're really pulling their car right up to their space and then
Yes,
they're
sir.
unloading there and then
Correct.
heading on back?
Yeah, they don't need a specific parking.
They don't need a
space for
parking
it.
space in that.
With this fortress design, it keeps all the tenants inside the area so that no one from the outside of this property is really going to see open doors or anything exposed.
Okay.
And it's better for security for our facility.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. I'm done. Anyone wishes to speak for or against this item? Okay. May I have a motion, please?
Yes, sir. Provided all outstanding conditions are resolved, move approval agenda item number 9, major site plan approval, DB 2022-211, Lockhart Storage.
Second. Oh, we have a motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed have the same right. 8 carries. Thank you. Congratulations. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, guys. Have a
Item
good evening.
number 10, please, Ms. Washington.
Sure. Item number 10. Echo Suites, Major Site Plan, DEV 2023-053, quasi judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Hello again.
Hi.
I'm Paula Long, planner for the city. Again, this is not a conceptual plan, this is the site plan. I came before you in October to bring you the PD for this project, which you approved. And now we're going to talk about the building of the project with the site plan. So tonight, I am here to present a request from Kelly Ivonen, Land Development Strategies LLC, on behalf of NSB 103 Development LLC, to approve a major site plan to construct 51,400 plus or minus square feet of hotel and associate site improvements on 2.98 acres of land. Again, this project is west of Andros Isle Boulevard, south of the Interstate 95 northbound Bevel Road off-ramp, and literally just north of Driggs Hill Drive, which is a private road. Heard about that last night? You heard about that 2 weeks ago? We're very familiar with this location, right? Okay, again, the site is vacant and undeveloped currently. It does show on this picture, for whatever reason, that the 3 parcels are divided. They've been combined. I'm the one that processed it. I definitely know they're combined now. The future land use for this property is interchange commercial. It is surrounded by that to the west, to the east, and to the south. North, of course, is that interchange with the off-ramp, and then tourist accommodation are those abutting future land use there. The current zoning, which was approved last night, is actually Plan Development General. Again, surrounded by Plan Development General, you have T5, which is tourist 5 accommodation there on the east of the property. The off-ramp again, obviously you can see, and then there is some agriculture to the north. Just to regurgitate last night, the planning board and what happened previously. The planning board did recommend approval of the Echo Suites zoning in October of 2023, literally 2 months ago, to allow for the development of the hotel use on that 2.98 acres of land. That item was heard last night. and approved by the commission for the second reading. Final approval was granted last night, December 20th. Currently, we are looking to now hear the proposed development of 51,400 plus or minus square feet of hotel use and the associated site improvements on 2.98 acres of land. Again, this 51,400 plus or minus acres of land does, gross floor area requires the planning board approval. Remember, anything above 20,000 square feet, it's coming to you, which is why we keep bringing site plans to your review for that reason. The proposed architectural renderings, you've seen some of this before. Obviously, it was in your packet. We do have a rendering for a daytime shot as well as for a nighttime shot. The proposed architectural is there. Again, this was included for you in your packet to review as well. And the site plan, which now this is the second time that you're seeing it on the big screen because we did look at it. Then it was in concept because they had already submitted it and we were able to bring that to you to review for that PD. And now here it is, the actual proposed site plan here. As it relates to the parking, this project actually, of course, does comply with the Echo Suites PD and the LDC requirements as detailed below. Again, this was included in your staff report that you received. We do have a total of 124 rooms that were, let me state that. The requirement is 1 space per room plus 1 space per 15 rooms for 124 proposed rooms. The total space required actually is 133 spaces in total. However, this site actually has 135 spaces, inclusive of 5 handicap spaces. Vehicular access does have the 2 ingress and egress entrances from Driggs Hill Road, Driggs Hill Drive. I want to make the road so bad, I don't know why. But it does have those 2 entrances there. I know that there was some discussion about that last night, and that actually was addressed. The applicant may and tonight, but that has been addressed as well. In addition to that, the pedestrian access does have an internal sidewalk network that is going to connect to Driggs Hill Drive, and you can see how that actually is coming in from the road and then connecting into the property there. The landscaping plan, which was of course included with your packet, does comply with the Echo Suites as well as the Land Development Code. It is acceptable. The chip generation for this project was not proposed and does not, after review, significantly add to traffic impacts in the area. Therefore, there is no traffic study. It was no traffic study performed for this purpose. Completion of, there's a couple of conditions, just 2. There has to be completion of an easement agreement for hydrant, specifically 1 hydrant, numbered P5563. That does have to be completed prior to us issuing the site plan approval letter. And in addition to that, there are some specific manholes that have to be inspected. Those locations are going to be on the individual services located at or near the property line, as well as the sewer service at the easement delineation. Provided all the outstanding conditions are resolved, staff recommends approval of the Echo Suites site plan to allow for the construction of 51,400 plus or minus square feet of hotel and associated site improvements, 0.98 acres of land. I apologize, I let this last part out last time, I was too excited. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to approve the application. This does conclude staff's report, and the applicant is available to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, are there any questions for staff? None? Oh, we have an applicant, please.
Got my choice here for microphones. Good evening. My name is Erin Trauger with Trauger Consulting Engineers, a civil engineering project. Business address 2210 Front Street. We're in Melbourne. Kelly Hyvonen couldn't make it here this evening. I think with the holiday upon us, there's some juggling of schedules, so she apologizes for not being here. But In general, staff does a very comprehensive job and a wonderful presentation to talk through the details. I'm here to answer any questions. As mentioned, we are now with the approval of the PD, compliant with land development code and the PD. Our parking is sufficient. It's a master planned system or a master plan development with Andrew Stiles that has stormwater, utilities, everything basically there and available for our development. So, if you guys have any questions, though, I'm happy to talk it through.
Okay, are there any questions?
No questions. I'm glad to see this project moving forward.
Exciting.
Are too. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I had one green form, and that must be you. Are there anyone else? Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this item? Not, may I have a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, provided all outstanding conditions are resolved, move approval of agenda item number 10, major site plan approval, DV 2023-053, Echo Suites.
Second.
Okay, it's been motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposers have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much. Have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Item number 11, please, Ms. Washington.
Doug Gutierrez, planner with the city.
Okay.
Excuse me.
I have Ms.
Hold on.
Washington read real quick.
I'm sorry.
Item number 11, Mainstay Assisted Living Facility, ALF, Major Site Plan DEV 2023-027, quasi judicial hearing.
Now, may we hear from staff, please?
Got excited, sorry.
That's all right.
Doug Gutierrez, planner with the city. This is a Mainstay ALF request by Chris Osa from Kimley Horn Associates on behalf of Mainstay Health. This is where I'm going to do my preemptive strike because I'm sure Mr. McLean caught I had rezone and put develop. So
Saves me a question. Thank you.
I caught it.
Good job.
Anyway, to develop 1.8 acres of property for two-story, 34,575 square foot, 50-unit assisted living facility, and the associated site improvements on the property that's located at 155 Yorktown. Generally located southwest quadrant of Bevel and Yorktown Drive. Is currently undeveloped. The current future land use is office transition, and the current zoning is residential professional. The project description, the applicant is requesting approval of a major site plan to allow for construction of two-story unit ALF. The proposed 34,575 plus or minus square feet requires planning board approval. 20,000 square foot threshold. The overall development plan, trying to highlight the structure. The landscaping, I did a little coloring on there just to kind of bring it out. It's difficult.
Nice job.
Using the paint software. These are the elevations, proposed architectural elevations and colors. And then the project details, building design, the architectural elevation of the project found to be acceptable by the TRT and meets the Bucky's. I'm sorry, that's the next one.
Next one.
I'm ahead of myself. By TRT, and then parking, the city requires a minimum of one parking space for every 2 beds. The applicant proposed 25 parking spaces, which meets that requirement. Landscaping for the project was found to be acceptable by TRT. Signage for development is required to comply with the city's land development code. For subdivisions, multifamily. The LDC permits a maximum combined sign area of 32 square feet for up to 2 signs. Meets that. The proposed sign is part of the landscape entrance feature in keeping with the overall character of the area. Now, there are conditions. There's still some outstanding comments, and they have to meet all those criteria before they'll get a site plan approval. Regarding stormwater, they had 4 comments, and they're currently working on addressing that because You see fire, I crossed that out, it's already been addressed, and fire marshal approved it as acceptable. Then the landscaping, he required prior to letter of approval. Recommendation, provided all conditions are met, staff recommends approval major site plan to allow 50-unit, story, 34,575 square foot assisted living facility and associated site improvements located at 155 Yorktown Drive. Majority voted planning board members, voting is required to approve the application. That concludes my presentation.
Questions? Okay.
Just a quick one. Doug, has the concurrency certificate been submitted? I'd see it was reviewed and found acceptable. I was just curious if it had been submitted at this point.
As
Yeah, when we review the site plan, we do issue the concurrency for the traffic. Concurrency for the actual utilities will occur at the building permit.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Kyle Cosby, project engineer with Kinley Horn. Thank you, Doug, for all your efforts to keep this project on track on this plan and zoning hearing. I just wanted to go through some of the conditions stated. We have addressed some of the conditions. We're going to work with staff to address the private road access that's off that Forest Lake road. It was found and determined by the city in November that road is actually a private road. We did not know that, and the access that's shown on the site plan is only for emergency service vehicles only. So it's only for the egress for the fire truck and the garbage truck. Not meant to be utilized by any vehicles to traverse down that way. So we'll work with the city on come up with a solution, kind of benefit both parties there, allow that access to provide egress for the emergency vehicles and dumpster truck. In lieu of the lieu of fee for the landscaping, we'll again work with the city coming up with some kind of mitigation requirement. My property, my client owns the property to the east. They own the property east and this property. So my client has discussed and said that they will be planting landscaping on that property to get that in lieu down. When we did the calculation, that in like around 300,000. We'll work with the city to get that down as possible. But that's all I had. I'm here to just answer any questions you guys may have, any concerns. I am a project engineer, so I can stormwater, utilities, that. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Robinson for me?
Is there another nursing home?
Sorry.
Is there another nursing home?
There is, yeah. It's the one to the property. My client is also.
Is that an assisted living facility?
Yeah.
Is it owned by your company?
It's not owned by my company, but my client's. Yes.
By your client's company?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? No, thank you very much. Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against this item? Okay, if not, may I have a motion, please?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chair.
I'm sorry, please.
I make a motion that we approve item number 11, Mainstay Assisted Living Facility, Major Site Plan DEV 2023-027 quasi judicial hearing.
We got caught up in a moment.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
Just-
I'm saying nothing on this one.
Was the intention that it be conditioned, that all outstanding conditions be satisfied? Was that the intention of the motion?
With all outstanding items be satisfied or addressed.
Outstanding.
Or should it be resolved?
Perfect. Second. Okay, so we have a motion. It's been properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed have the same right. 8 carries. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Christmas. All right, item number 12, please, Ms.
Item number 12, Floor and Decor Major Site Plan, DEV 2023-083, quasi judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Secretary's plan with the city. I'm going to do another preemptive. I misspelled decor. One of those moments.
Got you on that done.
Senior moment.
Floor and Decor.
Okay, this is a request by Byron Reynolds from KCI Technologies on behalf of Bucky's Limited property owner. Approve major site plan for floor and decor, spelled it correctly this time. Outlets to construct a 64,122 square foot retail sales building within the Bucky's 3D agreement on lot 6, which consists of 6.8 acres. This is where it is located, property located at 2342 Gateway North Drive, west of Bucky's convenience store / gas station, and is currently vacant and undeveloped as the aerial shows. The future land use is mixed use, and it's currently in the Bucky's PD. The Bucky's PD agreement was originally approved by the city in April of 2018, allowing for development of a variety of uses, retail sales being a permitted use. Applicant proposes to construct a 64,122 square foot retail sales building with the required landscaping, parking. The proposed improvements will include asphalt parking lot and drive aisles, concrete sidewalks, signage, trash enclosures, loading dock, customer loading pickup area, landscaping, and underground stormwater infrastructure. And traffic circulation has been designed to make certain that it's safe and efficient. And this is the overall development plan. The proposed landscaping plan, again, tried to give a little color. I can do that again. This is the architectural elevations. South and north elevation, and the rear and the front elevation. The details of the proposed building and site configurations consistent with Bucky's PD agreement. Prior to issuance of site plan approval, all technical comments will need to be resolved. Project includes vehicle ingress and egress access point connection from Gateway North. Applicant is aware site plan approval will not be issued prior to payment of portion of fair share. Fair share being satisfied, and pedestrian connection is an internal sidewalk system that connects to the building. Landscaping, detailed landscaping plan has been reviewed in compliance with Bucky's PD agreement, and land development code has been found to be acceptable. Prior to issuance of site plan approval letter from the traffic division, the applicant will require to revise sheet C 10.2 and remove the -388 sign details. Utilities, FEMA has not approved their letter of map revision fill at this time, but a community acknowledgement form has been signed by the city. Pay all outstanding fees prior to site plan approval. Portion fair share, I think it's repeated itself. And Public Works, the site plan must address access issues. All that has to be taken, addressed and satisfied prior to issuing the approval letter, and I believe they're already working with staff on satisfying those conditions. So, provided all conditions are met, staff recommends approval of site plan with stated conditions: floor and decor, construct 64,122 square foot retail sales building in the Bucky's PD agreement on lot 6, 6.8 acres of land. Majority voted planning board members present and voting is required to approve the application. That concludes staff's report.
Questions for staff? No? Thank you very much. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Joey Posey, 420 South Nova, attorney for the applicant. And just wanted to say thank you, staff. I know it's been a long night. with the site plans, a lot of details and walking through them. This one's very straightforward. I did have one clarification on the prop share part of this, that obviously we're happy to enter into that agreement. It will happen, but it may lag in terms of our development timeline because we want to get started. But we're not avoiding that requirement. Happy to pay it, but that agreement itself is a jurisdictional back and forth between the county and the city. So, we're not avoiding the number. It's just in terms of the lag, we didn't want to lose a few months on hearing going here, hearing going there, just because we want to pull building permits. So I just wanted that clarification made because I did see the condition read that the agreement itself had entered.
Yeah, but you were going to enter into an escrow agreement.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we're good then. Okay, so that will be satisfied. Okay. All right, questions for applicants? Yes, sir, Mr. Roberts.
Exactly. What are you building?
Oh, well, this is a floor and decor. A floor and decor. And again, it's probably better if I defer to the development team because they're actually here and they can talk intelligently about it. It's a really cool store. So
It's a cool store.
It's a what?
A
A
store.
store like Walmart?
No.
it's better than Walmart.
Good evening.
Light carpet, tile.
Okay. Just state your name and,
Byron Reynolds, KCI Technology, 1425 West Cypress Creek Road, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's the floor and decor. It's basically as Ms. Washington, so tile, flooring, anything that you like to put in your house. It's not necessarily Lowe's or Home Depot, but it's more of a retail store.
For floor products.
Oh, floor, yeah, basically.
Oh, okay.
Floor.
Not a, I thought you were building a car wash out there or something.
Nah,
That's the other one.
that's another app.
That's the neighbors.
Oh, that's all different.
That's all different. I thought that's what this was. Then I was like, floor and decor, what are you gonna do with your floor and decor? What are you
Awesome.
doing with
Yeah. Why do we need a
Awesome.
decor for a car wash? Yeah.
I'm trying to figure it out. Like, cut
On the
it.
carpet. Anyway, thank you very much. Are there any questions? No?
No, sir.
I don't have, had Mr. Joey here. I don't have any other green forms. Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against this item?
Not too many.
Nope.
people left.
May I have a motion, please, with those
Yes,
conditions?
sir, I think so. Move approval with stated conditions for agenda item number 12, major site plan approval, DB 2023-083, floor and decor.
Good. And all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposers have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Item number 13, Ms. Washington.
Actually, if I can jump in here, item number 13 is a request by Growth Management and Planning Department. We actually want to make a couple more changes to this proposed text amendment, so we'd like to continue this item to the next meeting so that we can address it at that time. And that would be continued to the January 25th meeting.
January 25th. May I have a motion for that, please?
Move to continue item 13 to January 25th
We
meeting.
have two motions. May I have a second?
Second. 2 seconds.
Question, we'll figure this out eventually.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposers have the same right. All right, we got item number 14 we'll address real quick. Downtown Baloo Road redevelopment area board report.
We met this month, largely discussing extra security for downtown redevelopment area.
Okay. New police force, new securities. What kind of
There's
personal?
a discussion as to whether to hire or to ask for more police supervision or to use the security that Brown & Brown uses in the Esplanade, and just extending their area over into the redevelopment area. That would include the entire downtown redevelopment zone, all the way over to the railroad tracks.
Okay. And I guess that would be a nice big discussion because that will interfere with Daytona Beach PD, and we certainly don't want to do that. Okay, thank you. Midtown redevelopment area board report.
Yes, Midtown met, went through our usual items, the reports from the police, and the main thing that was on the agenda was a step show that they're looking forward to bringing on board in the Midtown area in hopes of having Bethune-Cookman to play a big part because of the students that do the step shows quite often, and for them to be their major sponsor.
Okay. Beachside Redevelopment Area Board Representative. Yeah. Affordable Housing Advisory Committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this will be quick. Their last meeting was the 29th of November. I was out of town, wasn't able to attend. They primarily addressed their year-end summary report, which will be talked about in more detail in their next meeting on the 24th of January, and I promise I'll be at that one.
All right. Public comments. Nope.
No.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Just a couple of comments. We will have the board elections at the next meeting. Mr. Barhu is termed out.
Termed out.
Yeah, termed out. So we'll have elections for board chair, vice chair, and secretary. And we'll also do the representatives for the different redevelopment boards. So consider that over the next month. Other than that, everybody have a great holiday season and be safe.
Okay.
Praise God.
Board comments.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and God bless all of you.
Okay. Mr. Robinson.
First, I'd like to say the staff does a wonderful job.
Yes. Yes.
There's always room for improvement.
Oh, you're a brave man. I'll tell you that.
At this season.
And you plan to participate next year?
I might not be. No, what I mentioned it to Dennis earlier is the delivery of the packages to us. And my request or my suggestion would be 10 days prior to the meeting so that we can have more than adequate time to digest, research, and be more knowledgeable of what we're reading and discussing and bringing to the planning board meetings. I don't believe 5 days or, a week before the meeting, and some of us are on 2 or 3 different other boards also.
Okay.
And I believe 10 days would be sufficient to give us enough time. And if it doesn't get to the 10 days for us to notice it, then you put it off to the next meeting. And I think that ought to be addressed and looked at to see the possibility or the probability that we have a 10-day delivery for our packages. I think we'd be a better serving the board. At least I would be more knowledgeable too.
And
They
we'll
gotta
do
work
what
this
we.
into their schedule.
What?
I said they have to work this into their regular work schedule.
I was just going to say that we will do everything we can, and we'll try to do that. It's putting a package together like this is quite a process, and it takes
It
a lot of
is.
time to be able to do that. So we try to get them out to you as quickly as we can. But I encourage you, if you do have any questions when you do get this, and I offer this to everybody, please contact me, and I can answer any question or assist you with anything that you might have in these packages.
But first, I would have to thoroughly digest the package first before I can call you to say, look, Dennis, what does this mean, blah, blah, blah. Within 4 or 5 days, all I'm doing is peripherally reading the package. And I'm not really digesting it or becoming very knowledgeable to have a meaningful discussion. So I come here and I'm presenting my questions to you because, your staff is now doing a presentation. And as we get older, it takes us longer to read these packages. And, being volunteers, we volunteer along a lot of other projects too. And most of you on the board have 2 or 3 different boards that you go to. And I think that 10-day would streamline the process and would also put more discipline to the developers to get theirs in on time. And if you can't make that deadline, then it'll be up to the next month's meeting. And I think that'd be a better, more consistent and more professional way than giving us 4 or 5 days to read it or less than a week.
We'll do what we can do.
Please. Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and be safe.
Okay. I just want to say again, we do appreciate all the staff and all the board members and our guest that sits here all the time, special guest. And we do appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. May God bless you. Meeting adjourned. Have a great evening.
Yes, sir.